Good morning, everyone. Welcome into our Saturday morning coaches show, and this is our swan song for this year or this school year, and we'll be back after the first football game, unless something happens to the show. You never know in this business what might go on, but we anticipate that we'll be back in either late August or early September after the Wildcats' first football game. And we'll be going through it again. It's been a busy year for us this year, and Doug and I think that we set a record this year as far as we're concerned in the number of games that we did this year. Doug told me I'd broadcast 75 games this year, Coach. Unbelievable. And he had shot 73. We had a couple that we were not allowed. The state game was one in basketball. We couldn't do any videoing of that game, and also Midlothian told us that they did not want their basketball game recorded in any fashion, so we did radio only for that. So it's been a busy year, and now I know why I feel kind of tired at this point, but things are smoothing out a little bit, and so there's absolutely nothing else to talk about. The Edge will be coming up in the first few days of June. I think it's around 10th or 11th, somewhere in there. And then the summer camps, Coach Hammock will be having one probably like he usually does in early June. And but that's football camp will actually be before that. They've moved theirs to late May, so for the 3rd through the 7th graders. So anyway, some of that stuff going on, but next week is going to be kind of a dead week in Sportsville because no spring game or no spring football. Absolutely no athletics that I know of. I think there's still some banquets to be held in some sports, and so we may have some of that. And then of course the Edge and summer camps are still to come. So kind of a quiet time. We do have Jared Hammock on. He's agreed to come on and kind of wrap up the baseball season. They wrapped up last Saturday after we did the coaches show. He was not here because he was busy traveling over to Rockwall, where they had their final game against Joshua. And as we were talking before we got in, before the lights came on here today, and nobody has, I take that back, Coach. I think one team has advanced into the Final Four, I guess, in the region.
Wally East swept
East.
McKinney North.
Did he send you a thank you note for not being matched up with him this year?
Well, he is a good friend of mine,
yeah.
And we have put him out of the first round 2 different times, and I don't guess I knew this until it was said the other day, maybe on Twitter, their Twitter, is they had never gotten out of the first round.
Wow.
And so when he won his first round, I had sent him a text congratulating him about advancing, and of course, he was thankful for that, and he did throw something in there. I was just glad we didn't have to play y'all. And so, what a run they've had, not to get out of the first round ever, and now they're going to the 4th round this year. So I'm very happy for him. That's got to be difficult to, never have gotten out of the first because they've made the playoffs very frequently. They just typically run into somebody playing really well at the time, and so I'm really happy for Heath to get to the 4th round, and hopefully they can do more than that.
A weird kind of series. Of course, we played Joshua and they eliminated us, but looked like one of their games, if I read it right, looked like a slugfest that somebody won, and then they had one of the teams had a very well pitched ball game. It looked like a 6-0 or something in there. Or how familiar are you with that one?
Well, I kept up with it. I think Corsicana was actually up 12-2 in the first game going into the bottom of the 5th. So, of course, Joshua had to get at least a run to continue the ball game, and they end up scoring 9 in the bottom of the 5th. And so I believe the final score was Corsicana 12-11. And then yesterday, Joshua won 6-0. So they've got a game 3 at 10 o'clock this morning at Dallas Baptist. So, of course, those are district opponents. They split during the regular season. Yeah. They split, obviously, the first 2 games of this series, so it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top.
Yeah, I think if I remember right, Corsicana might have been a 2, and
They were.
Joshua was the 3 in that
Correct.
district. And then Cleburne, and they're still alive too. So that's 3 teams out of that district in the final 8. That's impressive.
Well, it's actually 4 because Cleburne's playing Midlothian, who was the
that's
4
right.
seed.
That's right.
And that
Oh,
series is
goodness.
going to a 3rd game today. So, yeah,
Yeah.
very, very good district, obviously,
Yeah.
if all 4 of your teams are still around. And, obviously 2 of them will be eliminated today, but it's quite a testimony to a very, very competitive district. And, Midlothian actually won game 1 of that series. The 4 beat the 1. In fact, I'd read somewhere also that like the 4 seed was 3-0 after the first game of this round. So a lot of good teams. You just never know. People playing really well. You make a mistake in a tight ball game and it can go either way. So, not much of it is surprising to me at this point of my career. I mean, you've just got good. When you get in the playoffs, and I think this way through the year, you don't take anybody for granted. You can't take anybody light. You have to bring your A game every time. And most of the time that'll be enough, but it may not always be enough even with your A game because they may be on their A game and maybe just a little bit better. So it's fun to play in these scenarios and these kind of games and just go compete. And I hate we're not a part of it anymore.
Yeah, it's awfully tough, and it goes back to what I've heard coaches say and what I've said over and over again, kind of usually probably did it after the Joshua game and after the Lady Cats softball, their last game. Unless you win the state championship, it always ends too soon. It just, and I always go back to an interview that I just kind of an informal chat that I was having with the guy that is the Hallsville head football coach, who was the head coach at Mineola, where they had lost in the state championship game and actually won a state championship maybe the next year or maybe vice versa. But anyway, he had gone through both of that. And he said they were on the bus after playing in the state championship game and losing and going back as losers. That bus was just, it was like the players had just been devastated. And it has to be, especially to reach that kind of peak and then not make it, that final step.
Exactly. And, my wife's as competitive as I am, and she always says, and it's correct, is that there are no 2 feelings that are more opposite than winning and losing.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, you want to handle it better when you lose, and I have gotten better in the sense that if I feel like we played really well and just got beat by a better team, while I'll be disappointed, I can get past that pretty quickly. It's when you get beat and it was because of something that we did to help the other team. Now that's a hard pill to swallow, and kind of go into a mourning period for a little while, and obviously you eventually get over it. But you just hate to. You just want to play your best, and you want to leave it out there. And I usually say I can live with what happens at that, at that point.
Yeah, I think Wide World of Sports had it right. The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And it just, that they are just poles apart, as your wife noted.
No question. And, I think I hate to lose more than I like to win, if that's possible. It's just I really do. And I hate to lose in anything. And we have some very competitive games at my own house with my daughters and my wife, and we don't like to lose. And, we certainly don't like it when we lose, and one of my daughters rubs it in our face. So, we're a pretty competitive family,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter what we're doing. We're trying to win.
Well, don't take them on in volleyball. You've got a couple of daughters that are very, very good in volleyball with Andon and Peyton.
No, I'm too old and overweight and out of shape. No, I don't mess with them in that.
Can't jump as
Can't
high
jump.
over that net as you used to.
No, I barely jump over a piece of paper.
Just as you reflect, has that Joshua game felt any different? Have you had any insight, that maybe we haven't heard before? After kind of reflecting, it's been a week now that you've had a chance to think about. I'm sure you replayed the game a lot in your head and things that went on. And
Well, I have, and this is one of those losses that I'm telling you it's harder to get over because, Payson threw such a good ball game.
He did.
I mean, I had him as a two-hitter.
yeah,
A two-hitter, you should win the ball game. But I think, with a couple of errors or 3 errors is what I had us for, give up 2 unearned runs, and so they end up scoring 3. But at the same time, you have to look at from their side. Their number 3 was pretty good. I mean, he's throwing 87 miles an hour as a number 3, and he pitched really well. We had some opportunities, but we made a couple of mistakes also on the bases that we haven't really made much in my time here, and certainly not this year. So we made our share of mistakes in the losses to Joshua. So that makes it harder to kind of let it go because I really feel like we're good enough to win this series. We're good enough to have won the series this week, I think, playing well. And so it makes it difficult to let it go. And this is a special group, and knowing that you're losing 9 off of this team, and really, if we had played well, we probably still would be playing. It's hard, to think about. So I guess I try not to as much as I can.
Yeah. Let's take our first internal break here, and we'll be back with more with Wildcats baseball coach Jared Hammock right after this. And back here on the Saturday Morning Coaches Show, talking with Wildcats baseball coach Jared Hammock, and he mentioned 9 of his seniors, and that's pretty typical baseball class. He mentioned David Carrillo's got 10 softball players. That's a huge softball. I don't ever remember David having that many seniors. He just kind of a special group that kind of was together for a lot of those for 4 years. But 9 Wildcats, and you've had 12 and maybe 13. You've had big classes. You've always seemed like had a veteran-laden team. It's hard to be a sophomore or something to get a spot on the Wildcats varsity. You really have to earn your way on. A very special player. You've had a few. And maybe thought we could talk about some of these seniors, and the first guy is probably one of those sophomores, Caden Argenbright. And what a wonderful player he's turned out for you, Coach, and he's been playing all over the diamond for you, and very valuable player, and just kind of a glue guy, I would think, on the team for you.
Without question, we're going to miss him a lot. Great kid, young man. He works at it. He's coachable. You don't have this kind of a leader very often. He's a guy that if somebody's not doing what they're supposed to, he can say it in such a way because they have such respect for him that they don't back talk him. They just fall in line, and that makes it easy on a coach. If a coach doesn't have to deal with every little thing, and you've got good player leadership, which, like I said, certainly he provided, that alone makes him, a special guy. Well, then you throw in, of course, his abilities. He's going to play college baseball at Henderson State. Great left-handed hitter. He was in the 2-hole for us probably all 3 years until we made that move in the middle of this season. We did have quite a bit of change. And he went to the leadoff for the rest of the way. Yeah, he's a superior catcher, shortstop, second base. I'm sure you could put him anywhere, and he would be able to excel at it. So, yeah, he will be very, very hard to replace.
Absolutely. Cameron Harrison, the player, he was on the varsity, seemed 2, maybe 3 years. I kind of get foggy back there, but did a little pitching for you and played first base, the outfield, and that sort of thing. Very speedy guy. He can get from around the bases pretty quick.
Cameron came up as we were thinking more as a pitcher. I think he played first. But just through the years, we figured, with his speed and his arm and trying to find him a place to play, he ends up in right field. And like you said, Cameron runs really well. He can track down a lot of balls, and certainly with his ability to throw, many times was a deterrent for runners to try to score, or tag up or whatever. Probably the play that I remember the most I don't know if it was game 1 or game 2 at Wiley East last year in the playoffs at McKinney Boyd. The kid at second tagged, hit a fly ball to right. Cameron catches it, of course, throws it all the way in the air and doubles the guy off that's tagging going to third. And that's a weapon that not many high school teams are fortunate enough to have, or outfielders that can actually assist in a play. A lot of putouts going to catch balls, but to be able to throw runners out on bases is a rarity, and he certainly did it more than once.
Love those pitchers that get out there in the outfield. I remember Jordan Jackson one time, and it's a famous call, or infamous, I guess I should say. A ball was hit to center, and I said, oh, that'll be deep enough to score the run. Runner tags at third. Jordan Jackson makes the catch, and with that pitching arm of his, he throws a strike to the catcher, and that guy's out by half the baseline, seemed like it. I said, oh, well.
Well, when you go back to him, you got a guy that, yes, played that position very well and had a good arm, but really what does all of that is his release was from catch to throw was as fast as anybody I think I've seen at the high school level. I mean, he could literally catch it and be rid of it, before you knew it, and accurate. Kind of a coach on the field was Jordan Jackson. Just got married the other day, by the way.
He did. He married a softball pitcher, Haley Dixon. Boy, that's a pair. I really I saw them actually at Rockwall last year, not in the playoffs. So they had come out to see the Wildcats. You were playing Prosper over there in the last season. I don't know if you want to avoid Rockwall. It's had 2 bad endings over there. I usually kind of remind the coach of that sort of thing. I got Andy Holt where he wouldn't schedule Greenville anymore after he had some bad experiences. And I talked to Coach Owens about going to SMU, although he only had bad luck over there once. Previous coach also had bad luck over there against Dallas Lincoln, as I recall. And so, it sometimes feels to be avoided. I know Coach Chapman would not play basketball anymore in Wills Point.
Yeah.
He was not very successful there, and there's nothing wrong with that gym. That is Clark played there this year and did fine, but if you kind of get bad vibes if you walk onto a field and go, man, I've been here before and it didn't turn out well, you might have one of those deals where you're negotiating saying anywhere but we shall see. And it's too bad. Rockwall, a great place to play.
Well, I like it, and I don't think it had anything to do with our 2 losses, so I'm sure I'll go back.
Yeah, that was an awfully good Prosper team, as they're showing this year. They hardly missed a beat going up to 6A, and then of course this Joshua team is out of that district we talked about, and they're still fighting there. Third senior that I have on the list, and one I don't know what we would have done without Austin Dodd this year, and especially when you moved him to that 5-hole, he just enjoyed that so much, and of course a really good defensive center fielder and all that kind of stuff, and the one-man rally on the bases, he made it all the way around one time without anybody hitting the ball, I think, stealing and making them overthrow and all that.
Yeah, he's been really good for us. You need a really good defensive center fielder, somebody that can go gap to gap and makes diving catches and, can play shallow enough and still go back on balls, and certainly he's been able to do that. He's been our leadoff for about a year and a half, like you said, until we just, we're at a point where we just needed to make some changes, and we did make some major changes that ultimately ended up working out for us. And I looked it up one time. Now, I hadn't counted the playoffs. I need to go back, but ever since he moved to that 5-hole through the end of the year, I think he was batting about 585.
Wow.
I think he went 7 for his first 8
Yeah.
In the 5-hole. I guess makes you should have done it a lot sooner. But then the last thing you said is, which really is, with all the other good things, probably the thing that I like the most about him is base running.
Yeah.
One of the more instinctive base runners that we've probably ever had here. Willie Ivory comes to mind. Austin Dodd, one of the few that I've ever just given a green light to. In other words, when he gets to first base, I don't have to give him the steal sign for him to be able to steal. and rarely ever gets thrown out, so he does a good job. He's aggressive, as you said. I believe it was a T-high game where he ends up at home. We needed the run. It ended up being the winning run, I guess.
Yeah.
And we don't even have to get a hit. He just seems to make his way around and forced a bad throw, going to third and scores. And so that's a weapon. I mean, good base running is a weapon, and he does it as well as anybody.
Yeah, I'm sure you stole it from somebody, but every time I say it, I think of you, and speed never slumps.
Speed never slumps, and I believe it was Waddy Herzog that said that back in the 80s when he had all those speedsters on the turf, the Vince Colemans, the Willie McGee's, Ozzie Smith, and those guys. Speed comes to the ballpark every day. You may not get a hit, you may make an error, but if you got speed and you're a good base runner, you're effective every time.
All right, let's take our second internal break. Back with more with Wildcats baseball coach Ch.18 Hammock right after this. And we're back here on the Saturday morning coaches show, kind of a swan song show here as we get ready to enjoy the summer months. And we were going through some of the Wildcat seniors and having Coach Ch.18 Hammock talk about them. And next guy was also part of the switches that went on. Chase Thompson went out to left field for you, Coach, another senior and real valuable member. I think more so than I've seen in the past. He was just an integral part of this year's team.
Old Jace is a kid that just always has a smile on his face. You just get a good feeling, kind of being around him. Good athlete, and he's played short. He's played second. Again, you're right. We just kind of had some rotation and really felt like moving him to left was a big deal. A lot of speed. One of the first things I remember about him in left was the first game over at Roy City. They hit a really deep ball in the gap that probably most people don't get, and he was able to run it down and catch it. So I kind of at that point felt like, he's made me look good, like that's probably a right decision moving him out there. The other thing he's got is a very, very strong arm, and so, he's able to throw out people as well. It's nice to kind of have that out there because, again, it deters runners from taking the extra base, from maybe tagging up, and those are all huge pieces in a ball game, as going through. So, he hit anywhere from cleanup. I think he ended up finishing with us in the 6th hole. Got a lot of power the other way, which he showed in his last at-bat of his high school career was the triple to right center. But, yeah, I agree, just a real valuable member. And, again, just one of several that seem to be able to play different spots, which, gives you a lot of options as a coach, because he's so versatile.
A utility guy, and, again, if you're only as good as your last game, what do we say about Payson Edwards? You've already alluded to the pitching job he did in that last ball game. It was just, and it seemed like he always was ready to step up and play for you. And I still remember that combined no-hitter that he had with Jackson Chaney. That was against Wiley East. And I believe the deciding game after Ryan Humphreys had pitched us into a tie in the series. And then they came back and no-hit Wiley East and for a big win in that series last year.
Yeah, he actually got first-team all-district utility a year ago. Short, third, pitcher, and, coming in, expected him to probably be number one on the mound just from, the prior year, and threw well, but just through the tournament season, it seemed like Will Sims had kind of stepped up in there as a pitcher, Jace Burchfield, who we'll get to in a minute in a different way. And so, Payson could then play defense more, be our first guy in relief a lot of times, and, it worked out well. I always said I don't think you think of him as this way, but if you say he's your number 3, I don't think there's another number 3 that really matches up with him very well, including the guy, because I think he outpitched him. Just because the kid throws harder doesn't mean anything. I think he outpitched the kid at Joshua the other day. And so having him throw your third game, I felt, I'll be honest, even after the debacle Friday night against Joshua where it just seemed like the wheels fell off, I really felt coming back into that Saturday with him on the mound that we're going to win this game. At the very least, he's going to give us a chance to win this game because he's been in some really big games on the mound over the last 2 years, and obviously you were there, so you saw it. It did not disappoint. Really did a great job of making them hit his pitch in his zone, and for the most part, other than 3 times, we played pretty good defense behind him. But a 2-hitter against a team that very well may go to the 4th round after playing today is something to say. And we'll definitely miss his ability to pitch in a big game, to play somewhere else, when you need him to. And he's just been a really good teammate to everyone. And like I said, hopefully in his mind he's had a good career here, and he's got some really good moments that he can take with him and think back on, proudly.
Very good. You mentioned Jace Burchfield. He's next in line, and I know, he really liked pitching, and maybe catching's not his favorite thing, but, he really, for the team, he really embraced that position and got to be a tremendous weapon for throwing out base runners. Of course, again, that strong pitching arm and nailing those base runners, kind of just shutting other teams' running games down.
Absolutely. Again, just we had to make some major changes, and that would have been one of them, because you're right, he was our Friday night starter on the mound and had done a good job of pitching throughout, but just really felt like, moving Caden to shortstop was necessary to advance us. And, I let him play some in practice at short, and just watching the plays he made out there, you're like, we got to do that. Well, to be able to do that, you got to have a catcher because that's his equally important position, and you got to have somebody that can step in there and get the job done. And you're absolutely right. He was a phenomenal defensive catcher for us. He threw out probably almost half the runners that stole. And again, the way it works, maybe even in the big leagues, but certainly at the high school level, if you throw somebody out early, it really deters the coach from wanting to call a steal again.
Right.
And I think he did that throughout the district, second half of district, threw out 2 really fast runners for Texas High. The center fielder, Lyles, threw him out, threw out another kid. And so once you start doing that, you're basically shutting down the running game, because the coach is a little antsy about calling a steal again, because you keep throwing them out and it doesn't look good. So, he did a tremendous job, because what we did doesn't work if he doesn't do a good job behind the plate, and he did.
All right, still more seniors to talk about. Let's take our last internal break. We'll come back and wrap it up with Coach Hammock right after this. And back here on the Saturday Morning Coaches Show, talking with Wildcats baseball coach Jared Hammock. And we've got 3 more seniors to talk about. One of them, Connor Burgin, who played in the outfield for you this year, Coach, and was a valuable guy to have around.
Absolutely. An unbelievably good role player. Another really good kid, just to be around. Accepted his role and excelled at his role. It hurt him when we moved Jace Thompson to left field, but he didn't bat an eye. He contributed as the courtesy runner. Then when we did, Jackson ended up becoming our Friday night starter on the mound. That moved Cameron to first, and so it allowed Connor to play right, and he did an outstanding job out there. He ran down a lot of balls, made some big catches for us. And actually at the bottom of the order, and we know the importance of this from the last 2 years, Gavin Millsap batting in the 9 hole, hitting about 350. When Connor was in the lineup in the 9 hole, he had some big hits for us in district, some balls down the left field line, or he was able to bunt somebody over or get them on. And he came up with some big plays for us at the plate and in the field. And again, just a kid that shows that you can be a good teammate and you can contribute when your time is called. You go out there and get the job done, and he's a model of that.
This next guy, unfortunately, unable to complete the season, injury problems. Brice McQueen, I saw him, still hanging around the team and being, a part of them all the way through the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. But pretty valuable guy for you until the injuries came.
He had played baseball his freshman and sophomore year. He did not play his junior year, so I really wasn't anticipating him coming out And I remember the call. Coach Silman calls me over the Thanksgiving break. Football was over, and he said Brice had called him. Well, he wanted to come back out. So I wasn't sure if he was going to or not, even after the phone call. I know because he's really fast. I didn't know if he's going to run track but he did come out. And I tell you what, you're not going to find a guy go any harder in practice. Playing in the outfield, I mean, he's running balls down right and left, and you know how BP goes. You hit one, he runs one way and grabs it. Well, before he can even get back to a spot, maybe they hit it again down the other line, and he's taking off after it and going to get it. Super fast. I mean, this may hurt some others' feelings, but he's probably fastest guy, on the team. So he did some courtesy running early on. Got to play some. Taking a year off's tough, particularly at the plate. But when he did get opportunities, he did put the bat on the ball. He got some hits. Again, a superior runner. And then I believe he had a hernia and ended up having an operation on that to fix that. And he was done basically being able to do anything. But you're right. He still went to games. He still showed up at practice and participated in those ways. But, it's a wonder what maybe he would have done had he played the year prior as well, because he's a good athlete, got some ability, got some hand-eye coordination, and helped us in the ways that he could.
All right, last on the list, Cameron Zahn for you, your 9th senior.
Cameron Zahn. Well, let me go through this, and I mean this with the ultimate respect. I just want to go through, Cameron as a freshman got cut. Well, then he comes back out, which right away at that point, kind of gives you an idea of who he is. Most guys that do that don't come back, which is unfortunate. He comes back. He's a sophomore. He was actually put on it was a JV team, but it's mostly freshmen. Didn't complain, goes to work, tries to get better. He's a junior on the JV. But he just persevered. He wants to come back out as a senior. And I'm perfectly fine with that because I like Cameron. And so he's out as a senior. I can remember we've got one of these little, it's called a bow net. You put it over the plate, kind of where when you hit BP, it keeps balls in. Early in the season, he couldn't he couldn't get his bat around quick enough to hit it out of that thing. Kept hitting it over here. I'm telling you, if we have an award, and I don't know that we do, I guess I could make one, hands down the most improved player. By the end of the year, he's hitting balls in the gap and base hit, and just from what you saw from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, just through effort and work and just enjoying being out there, and man, he got a whole lot better. And that's what you like to see. A kid that loves to be out there, loves to play, gets better over time, and I mean a lot better. I mean, he was legitimate. He got a base hit at McKinney North. Brought him. He had to come in because Connor Burgin ran into the wall and busted his lip. And Cameron goes out there, makes a catch, and gets a base hit. He may be the only hitter that has a 1,000 career batting average. I don't know, but again, just one of those things that can probably only happen in high school baseball. Just a neat kid to have around, and again, just loves being around, and wants to get better and does everything he can to get better. And again, I think you ask any player on our team, and they would say there's zero doubt he improved from start to finish more than anybody else on our team.
Yeah. The moves you made, and again, you look like a genius doing this because, I mean, everything, Jason left field, Argenbright shortstop, and Burchfield behind the plate, the batting order, Dodd hitting 580 or whatever he was talking about. I mean, did you and Silman talk this through, or did you just kind of say, here's what we need to do? Or did it all start with Argenbright, just looking at him and saying, man, I got to get him at shortstop?
Well, probably that initially. And then, of course, I always talk to Bruce about about stuff. But yeah, just when we do defensive BP, what we call it, a lot of times I'll try to give the catchers the day off and maybe stick them at a spot to fill in and rest their legs, and he usually goes to short. And I mean, again, just, batted balls, he's making plays in the hole, Derek Jeter's type, backhand, jump in the air and throw across, and I'm thinking, and I didn't do it the first time. I had to see it a few times, so it's probably 2 or 3 weeks in the making. And I just thought, man, I mean, we might have to just make that move. He just makes every play out there. And again, though, the second thing you got to figure out is, because Jace is pitching, now you got to put him at catcher, which eliminates him pitching. Who's going to pitch now for him in his spot? Because you don't really like your catcher's, legs get tired. You can't just really, it's hard to go back and forth, catch, pitch. And so, just talking to Bruce, I kind of brought that up, and, he'd give some insight on it. And we just decided that at this point, we've got to do something. We go from being 8-1 and ranked 5th in the state to just losing games in ways that we've never done in 14 years here. And so, we did it. And we did it. The first game we did it was one of the worst losses that we've had, but it wasn't really because of that, I don't think. It was the Greenville game over there. And offensively, it worked. Moving people around, different order. We scored 9 runs. We're up 9-5, as you know, going into the last at-bat for Greenville, and we don't play well. It was just kind of the last bad game. And then we got rolling after that with that lineup, moving through. I guess we won 5 straight district ball games, twice against T-High in the last week, which is, people don't realize, is quite a feat, in my opinion. Particularly going over there and winning is quite a feat. And so it just seemed to work. Just seemed something that we needed to do. You're right. It makes me look really good, but it's obviously the players have to play and execute and do it. So, obviously you need to give them the credit for it. And then it just kind of continued into the playoffs, didn't it? I mean, won 2 really tight ball games against Hallsville, win the first game against Joshua. It seemed like we might be that little team of destiny, as we've talked about. And, and then we had the bad Friday night game, and then a very disappointing Saturday loss, 3-1. Just kind of ended all of that. But I couldn't be prouder. What we went through, obviously it was very difficult to lose just that many games in a row and lose them in bad fashion. And it could have been a time that we could have just basically quit and just tried to finish out the year, but that's just not what happened. I talked to Coach Silman. I said, as difficult as this is, particularly after the Greenville loss over there, I said, we have to be optimistic. We have to be positive, and see if we can get through this. And players coming in, to their credit, and I've given them credit many times, to them and to anybody else that'll listen, they never showed up with quit in their thoughts. If you came to our practice, and it was a Friday night bad game against Greenville, that next Monday, you would not know we were 2-8 in district. You would not have known we just lost a 9-5 lead in the last at-bat against them. They just showed up every day like little boys wanting to play baseball. And then as we got going and how good that feeling was, and of course in the end, it's all worth it. Now, in the middle of it, I wasn't sure it was worth it, but just what lessons can be learned, from that as adults, as kids. And I told them the very last thing I said to them in our meeting, in our huddle, I said, you'll all experience true heartache at some point in your lives as adults, whether it's a loss of a job, you're in financial difficulty, you got a sickness, you got all that. And I just looked at each one of them as I went around. I said, and one thing I've learned from this season is not one single one of you will quit, will lay down in those scenarios, in those situations. You will persevere. You will move forward. If you haven't learned anything else about yourselves this season, that needs to be it. And I believe that. I think those, we all know that about life. We're all going to get hit with it, and sometimes you want to quit. Sometimes you just want to get under the covers. But I don't believe that those guys will any one of them do that. They will persevere. They'll get through it. They'll get past it and be better on the other side of it.
Yeah, once you kind of get over the disappointment of the Joshua game, I know there have been times probably you sit down and say, okay, what are we looking like next year? And, of course, you may do that during the season and everything, but I think a great place to start, having two solid pitchers with Will Sims and Jackson Chaney. Boy, that's a great place to start. Colson Hale was a big-time starter at second base, so guys to build on there. And Shane McQueen's JV team looked awfully impressive too.
Yeah, the changes, the way they worked out, not only helped us this year, but it helped us for next year. Because you're right, the two starting pitchers were juniors, and so they got a lot of action in some big-time ball games. Both of them beat, T High. Both of them beat Mount Pleasant down the stretch. And so moving forward, you're right, we've got that. Jake Davis, a little lefty who I still believe he's probably got the best curveball, in the program, and he's going to have to be called upon to pitch. He's going to have to be called upon to take over one of those outfield spots because they're all gone. And then, like you said, you got, Sims and Jackson both play corner spots after they pitch, so you've got that back. Colson Hale, who is a man, we could be here all day talking about that guy and who he is, just a little go-getter, hustler, running on and off the field. Just people are kind of drawn to him and his love for the game and just the way he goes about his business. So we're losing. Let's be honest, we're losing some quality people and some quality players, but I do think we have a nice little core that are coming back. And like you said, the JV had a successful season. Who knows? Maybe there's a freshman who will be a sophomore. All that'll play out as we get closer. But I think we're capable of doing some really good things again.
All right, very good, Coach. As always, I always enjoy having you on the Coaches Show, and your team has provided some great thrills this year. The way that they, refused just to stay on the mat and decided to get back up. Was it like Muhammad Ali said? He was too good to be down on the mat.
That's
and
right.
It's time to get up.
Champions don't belong on the mat.
Absolutely, and that's what I'll always remember about this team is the way that they rallied back and made the playoffs, and then not just that, not just satisfied with hey we've made by district, but to get into that second round and again it always ends too soon.
Well, without question, because, again, in my head, I thought, we've got a real opportunity to advance with this team and the bracket. Good teams, but teams that we could match up with and do well. And when it's over, it's just it's tough. And because, again, it's mostly about the day-to-day relationship with players that now you're not going to see, who knows when. Because you go off to college, you go off and do things, and so it's always a thrill. Any player throughout the years, and I've been here, I guess it's finished up 14, that I run into, or we go eat lunch, or whatever we do. It's always a thrill for me. I love all of my guys, and we've had some really good ones through the years. Not only again as players, but just as good people. And a lot of them now are married and have kids, and they're doing really well. And that's even more than what you do, in my opinion, what you do on the field. That is true success. If you have any part of getting that young man to where he is now, productive, good father, good husband, that's what it's about.
Yeah, how many times we're standing around Eagle Stadium, at the end of a game, we wait until you talk to the players and all that kind of stuff, and then would grab an interview, and you'd look up, and there's one of your old players coming back, and get to shake their hand and kind of find out what they're up to and all that. Always a special moment for a coach.
Oh, absolutely. That is the moment. To me, more than any championship you could have, that's really what it's about. And like I said, I always get a thrill, whether I'm in Walmart, running into somebody, like you said, they come to games and they hang out and wait, and whether it's on the road or at home. Sometimes you see a player, Connor Brockon one time. I think he lives in Greenville now. He came to the Greenville game a year ago and waited around and talked. He's been to some playoff games and others. And so, we've just been blessed with just some really good kids, really good families, and not bad ball players to boot. So it's definitely a blessing.
Yeah, right in front of us at the broadcast on Saturday from Rockwall was Mason Buck. Boy, what a great center fielder he was. And I always remember that comment. He had the glove where the ball would go to die when it was hit out into the gaps. So Mason would find it. So.
Absolutely. He's as good a center fielder as we've had defensively, no question about it. He could run really well, and he got to a point where he was confident enough in himself that he would be extra aggressive on balls that maybe a lot of guys would end up letting just drop and you kind of play it. He'd go get it, dive, run through it, whatever it took. And, he's been at a few of our games. Always appreciated Mason's abilities and as a center fielder.
In his humble opinion, Jackson's foot was on the bag at that out at first base.
I don't have any doubt it was. It just, those kind of things go against you sometimes. Yeah. And, all you can do is overcome it. It's a shame. Obviously we could talk about what happened to David, and that's even more of a shame. But, I forgot who it was, said if you take umpires and errors out of the game would die off. So umpires are part of it, and they're human, and they make mistakes. And, in my humble opinion, it seems like they're just making more as the years go by. But, it's part of it. And, again, it's just another example for sports and life. It's an adverse situation. What are you going to do about it? We can whine and complain about it, or we can try to overcome it. And, but, again, unfortunate that it didn't get called the right way.
Yeah, if you go back into the annals of baseball in the 1880s or something, you could probably find a dispatch where, oh boy, the umpire just really missed one out there today, and the Boston Bean Eaters or something against the New York Highlanders or whatever they were way back when. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up. Coach Hammock, again, thank you for your time. And that's our Saturday morning coaches show. And again, we'll be back after the first football game, or at least that's our plan right now. And thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday morning. I'm Don Julian, and so long, everybody.